Silent CEO pretended to be a janitor for a week. Only one trainee girl treated him like a human. Among dozens of trainees desperate to impress, only one young woman, Bennett, stopped beside him and asked, "Do you need a hand with that?" She had no idea she had just shown kindness to the most powerful man in the company. Because no one inside the 47-story tower knew the quiet janitor mopping the floors every morning was actually Evan Cole, the cold, silent CEO they had only ever seen on financial news. For 1 week, he kept his head down. He picked up discarded coffee cups. He listened to casual insults. He watched polished smiles from people who loved talking about company culture while treating invisible workers like robots. And Evan had no idea that this intern from the small town was about to change his life forever. And would force him to confront the most painful truth. His company wasn't short on talent. It was short on people who still knew how to see another human being. No one inside the 47-story headquarters of Cole and Hartwell Logistics knew that Evan Cole had stopped being their CEO that Monday morning. At least not in any way they could recognize. At 8:05 a.m., Evan sat at the head of the executive conference table, looking past the glass walls toward downtown Chicago. The city below was already awake, trucks rolling through narrow streets, trains crossing steel bridges, the lake sitting gray beneath a hard morning sky. Behind him, Claire Donovan clicked to the next slide. "Employee satisfaction is up 12%, she said smoothly. "Training engagement is strong. The new trainee cohort has responded extremely well to our leadership pipeline." On the screen, bright blue bars climbed upward. Respect, inclusion, and accountability are the top 3 words used in feedback forms. Several executives nodded. Evan did not. He was 37, silent by reputation, feared by people who mistook stillness for anger. Most employees only knew him from financial news interviews and the framed portrait in the lobby. Cold, brilliant, untouchable. But that morning, beneath Claire's glossy report, lay a folded letter written in uneven blue ink. It was from Walter Simmons. Walt was 63, a janitor who had worked in the building for 18 years. He was out on medical leave after knee surgery, but before leaving, he had written directly to Evan. "Mr. Cole, I don't think you know what your company feels like from the bottom floor." The letter described custodial staff being ignored, security guards being mocked, warehouse workers blamed for software failures, and complaints disappearing inside human resources. The last sentence had followed Evan all weekend. "Sir, this place still runs, but I don't know if it still has a heart." Claire ended her presentation with a calm smile. "As you can see, the culture is healthy. Isolated concerns exist, of course, but nothing systemic." Evan looked up. "Did Walter Simmons file a complaint before his leave?" Claire smiled tight and just slightly. "Yes, we reviewed it, and it did not require escalation. Walt has been under physical stress. Sometimes long-term employees struggle with change." Evan said nothing. That was what unsettled people most about him. He rarely raised his voice. He simply became quieter. That night, after the executive floors emptied, Evan took the service elevator to the basement. In a narrow supply room, a gray uniform hung from a hook. A temporary badge was clipped to the pocket. Ed Miller. For security, Evan removed his watch and placed it in his coat pocket. By Monday morning, Evan Cole had disappeared from the top floor. Ed Miller arrived at 6:40 a.m. pushing a yellow mop bucket. No one looked at him twice. On the trainee floor, 18 new hires gathered outside a glass-walled classroom, carrying laptops, coffee, and nervous ambition. Evan lowered his head and began mopping near the coffee station. A young man in a navy blazer stepped around the wet floor sign without slowing. Careful, Evan said quietly. The trainee glanced back irritated. Then maybe don't mop where people walk. A few others laughed. Later, a woman from marketing placed an empty cup on Evan's cleaning cart, though a trash can stood 3 feet away. Thanks, she said, already walking off. By mid-morning, Evan understood what Walt meant. It was not one dramatic act of cruelty. It was 100 small permissions. A door left to close in someone's face. A spill abandoned for someone else. A name ignored because a uniform had replaced it. Then a chair scraped across the floor. Evan turned. A young woman was moving it out of his path before he reached the corner. She wore a simple cream blouse, black slacks, and shoes that looked new but not expensive. Sorry, she said. I didn't want you to have to mop around it. Evan looked at her name tag, Maya Bennett, Trainee Program, Ohio. That's all right, he said. She hesitated then asked, do you need a hand with the others? It was a small question, ordinary, human. Inside the classroom, other trainees were laughing too loudly at Claire's jokes, standing straighter whenever a manager passed. But Maya had stopped for a janitor no one else bothered to see. No, Evan said softly. I've got it. Maya smiled. Well, thank you for keeping this place from falling apart. Then Claire called everyone inside. Evan stayed in the hallway, one hand resting on the mop handle, watching Maya take her seat behind the glass. For the first time in years, he wondered if the most important meeting in the building was not happening upstairs. Maybe it was happening right here, beside the wet floor sign, where only one person had remembered he was human. Maya Bennett had spent the night before orientation ironing the same cream blouse twice. It was not expensive. Nothing in her suitcase was. She had packed 2 pairs of slacks, 3 blouses, 1 blazer from a clearance rack, and a pair of black flats that pinched her heels but looked professional enough if no one looked too closely. Her apartment in Chicago was temporary, small, and too close to the train tracks. Every time the floor trembled, she reminded herself it was still better than going back to Ohio with another unfinished plan. She needed this job, not wanted, needed. There were student loans waiting in her inbox. There was her mother's prescription bill taped to the fridge back home. There was her younger brother Caleb, who never asked for help, but had quietly started picking up extra shifts at the garage after their mother's stroke. Maya had taken a year off school to help at home. People called it responsible, but responsibility did not look impressive on a resume. It looked like a gap. So, when Cole and Hartwell Logistics accepted her into its trainee program, she told herself this was her chance to prove she belonged somewhere bigger than the small Ohio town where everyone knew what your parents owed and what you had failed to finish. Inside the training room, belonging seemed to come naturally to Tyler Reed. He arrived 5 minutes early wearing a navy suit that looked tailored and a smile that looked practiced. By 9:15, everyone knew he had graduated from Northwestern, interned in New York, and once had coffee with someone who now worked in private equity. He did not brag exactly. That was what made it effective. He dropped achievements gently as if embarrassed by them and let other people pick them up. Claire Donovan noticed him immediately. Excellent point, Tyler, she said after his first answer. Tyler smiled modest and bright. Just building on what you said. Maya wrote that sentence down, then crossed it out. She could analyze warehouse delays, compare route efficiency, and spot flaws in a workflow after 10 minutes of watching people move. What she could not do was make powerful people feel clever while pretending the idea had been theirs all along. During the first break, the trainees gathered near the coffee station. Maya stood a little apart stirring powdered creamer into coffee that tasted burnt. Tyler leaned against the counter with two other trainees, Brandon and Elise. "So," Brandon said, nodding toward the hallway, "is that the guy from facilities assigned to us all week?" Evan, still wearing the name badge that said Ed Miller, was wiping coffee rings from a nearby table. Tyler glanced at him. "Looks like it." "Good. We're important enough to get our own janitor." Elise laughed. Maya looked down at her cup. It would have been easy to say nothing. Everyone else did. Tyler picked up a used stir stick and tossed it toward the trash. It missed, landing beside Evan's cart. "Oops," Tyler said. "Ed's got it." Evan bent down without a word. Maya stepped forward first, picked up the stir stick, and dropped it into the trash. Tyler watched her. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," Maya said. "That's kind of his job." Maya met his eyes. Making the mess wasn't. The little circle went quiet, not dramatically, not enough to become a scene, just enough for the air to change. Tyler gave a short laugh. "Ohio, right?" Maya felt the word hit the way he intended it to, small, unsophisticated, out of place. "Yes," she said. He smiled. "That explains the manners." For a second, Maya almost smiled back. That was what people did when they wanted to survive a room. They softened insults by pretending not to understand them. Instead, she took her coffee and returned to her seat. Across the hall, Evan kept wiping the table, but his eyes followed her. The morning continued with team exercises, leadership assessments, and Claire's polished speeches about culture. At Colin Hartwell, Claire said, "We value competence. We value initiative. We value people who know how to step forward." Maya wondered if there was room for people who stepped aside so someone else would not have to bend down. At lunch, boxed meals were brought into the training room. The trainees ate quickly while trying to sound impressive between bites. When they finished, most left their containers scattered across the tables. Tyler stacked his empty salad bowl on Evan's cleaning cart as he passed. "Thanks, Ed," he said without looking at him. Maya stood, gathered her own trash, then quietly picked up two containers left by others. Brandon smirked. "Careful, Maya. Keep that up and they'll promote you to facilities." A few people laughed. Maya's face warmed, but she kept walking to the trash can. She did not make a speech. She did not shame anyone. She simply did the thing that should have been normal. That was what unsettled Evan most. She was not performing kindness. She was paying for it. By the end of the day, he had seen the pattern clearly. Tyler was rewarded for sounding like a leader. Maya was punished, softly and socially, for acting like a decent person when no one important was watching. And the worst part was that Claire seemed to prefer it that way. When the trainees filed out, Maya was the last to leave. She noticed Evan lifting a heavy stack of chairs near the wall. She paused. "Are you sure you don't need help?" Evan almost said no again. Then he looked at the room behind her. The abandoned cups, the expensive notebooks, the crumbs left on the carpet by people being trained to lead his company. He lifted one end of the stack. "You can grab the other side." Maya smiled, tired but genuine. Together, they moved the chairs back into place. For the first time that day, Evan did not feel invisible. And for the first time, Maya did not feel entirely alone. By Wednesday morning, the trainee program stopped feeling like orientation and started feeling like a competition. Claire Donovan walked into the glass-walled training room carrying a stack of folders against her chest. She placed them on the front table and looked at the 18 trainees as if she were already sorting them into winners and leftovers. Today begins your first major assessment, she said. You'll work in teams to design a proposal for improving delivery efficiency across our Midwest routes. Several people straightened in their chairs. Maya did, too. Claire continued. You'll present your findings Friday morning to senior leadership. We're looking for strategic thinking, data clarity, and executive presence. At the phrase executive presence, Tyler Reed smiled. He was chosen as Maya's team lead within 5 minutes. No vote was taken. Claire simply glanced around the room and said, Tyler, why don't you coordinate Group 3? Tyler accepted with just the right amount of humility. Happy to help. Maya sat across from him with 3 other trainees. Brandon opened the shared document. Elise searched for past delivery reports. Tyler uncapped a pen like someone preparing to sign a treaty. Okay, he said, let's think big. Automation, regional hubs, cost reduction. Senior leadership loves clean, scalable ideas. Maya looked at the route data on her laptop. Clean ideas don't always work cleanly, she said. Tyler glanced up. Meaning? She turned the screen slightly. The Midwest delays aren't only about route distance. Look here. Late deliveries spike after storms, but the software doesn't seem to adjust driver schedules enough. Drivers still get penalized when the route was unrealistic from the beginning. Brandon frowned. How would you know that? I worked in a warehouse back home, Maya said. Small operation, but same pattern. Dispatch would promise delivery windows that look good on paper. Then drivers got blamed when weather, loading delays, or bad routing made them impossible. Tyler leaned closer, suddenly interested. Maya continued, gaining confidence. And warehouse teams get blamed, too. But if a truck arrives late because the schedule was impossible, the whole dock backs up. Then the warehouse looks inefficient. It's not one department failing. It's the system protecting itself by blaming whoever has the least authority. For once, no one laughed. Elise typed quickly. That's actually strong, she said. Tyler nodded, very grounded. We can use that. Maya felt a small lift in her chest. For the next hour, she mapped out the problem. Route software that ignored local weather patterns, warehouse shifts that were understaffed during predictable rush windows, driver feedback that never reached decision makers. She suggested a pilot program that paired data analysts with warehouse supervisors and drivers before routes were finalized. Tyler listened carefully, too carefully Evan thought. He was outside the room wiping fingerprints from the glass wall. From there he could see the shared document projected faintly on Maya's laptop. Her name appeared beside several bullet points. By lunch Tyler was praising her. Maya, this is good, he said, really good. It just needs a more executive frame. She smiled uncertain but grateful. Sure, I can clean up the language. I'll handle that, Tyler said. You've got the field perspective. I'll make it boardroom ready. The phrase bothered her but she let it pass. That evening after the others had gone, Maya opened the shared document from her apartment. The train rattled past her window as the file loaded. At first she thought she had opened the wrong version. Her section was gone, not deleted exactly, absorbed. Her observations about drivers, weather, and warehouse bottlenecks had been rewritten under a new heading. Tyler read, Strategic Operations Framework. Her name had been moved to a smaller section near the bottom. Supporting research. Maya stared at the screen until the words blurred. She clicked Version History. There it was. Tyler had edited the document at 7:42 p.m. Her notes had been reorganized, renamed, polished and taken. The next morning she approached him before training began. "Tyler, can we talk about the document?" He did not look surprised. "Sure. You moved my analysis under your section. I streamlined it. You removed my name from the main framework." Tyler sighed softly, the way people do when they want patience to look like generosity. "Maya, this is a team project. Ownership gets besides, leadership is a shaping Brian put in strategy." But she felt that she wanted to. "I'm not asking for special credit," she said. "I'm asking not to be erased." Tyler's expression cooled. "Careful, that kind of language can make you seem difficult." There it was, the warning beneath the smile. Difficult, unpolished, not a culture fit. Maya thought of her blouse from the clearance rack, her Ohio address, the gap on her resume, the way Claire looked at Tyler like he already belonged. She hated herself for hesitating. During the afternoon review, Claire praised Group 3's draft. "Excellent synthesis, Tyler," she said. "This is exactly the kind of leadership lens we want to see." Tyler nodded. "Thank you." The team contributed, of course. Maya sat still. Her hands were folded under the table so no one could see them shaking. Outside the room, Evan paused with a spray bottle in one hand and a cloth in the other. He had seen enough. After the session, he found Maya sitting alone near the end of the hallway, pretending to check emails while wiping quickly beneath one eye. He stopped beside her. "You all right?" he asked. Maya gave a small laugh without humor. "I'm fine. I'm just learning how things work." Evan rested both hands on the mop handle. "No," he said quietly. "You're learning how broken things ask decent people to adjust." She looked up at him. For a janitor, Ed Miller had a way of speaking like someone who had spent years inside rooms with locked doors. Maya swallowed. "If I say something, I'm difficult. If I don't, I disappear." Evan's face softened, though his voice stayed low. "Don't let this teach you that silence is proof of maturity." The sentence stayed in the air between them. Maya studied him then, really studied him. The careful posture, the watch-shaped pale mark on his wrist, the way he noticed everything and reacted to almost nothing. "Ed," she said slowly, "were you ever a manager?" Evan looked toward the training room where Tyler was laughing with Claire. After a moment, he answered, "I've been responsible for people." "That's not the same thing." "No," Evan said. "It isn't." Then he pushed his cart down the hallway, leaving Maya with a strange new thought. Maybe the janitor was not who everyone believed he was. And maybe for the first time since she had arrived, someone had seen exactly what was being taken from her. By Thursday evening, the trainee floor no longer looked like a place for learning. It looked like a stage. The conference room had been cleared of desks and filled with tall cocktail tables, soft jazz, silver trays of appetizers, and executives wearing the relaxed smiles of people who were still very much judging everyone. For most of the trainees, the networking event felt like an opportunity. For Maya, it felt like a test she had not been taught how to pass. She stood near the edge of the room in the same black slacks she had worn that morning, holding a glass of sparkling water she had not touched. Around her, people laughed easily about graduate schools, ski trips, summer internships, and fathers who knew someone on a board somewhere. Maya knew shipping delays, warehouse noise, and how to stretch a paycheck. She did not know how to turn those things into charm. Across the room, Tyler Reed was thriving. He stood with Claire Donovan and a vice president of operations named Grant Keller, speaking with the confident ease of someone who had never wondered whether he belonged. "Our proposal focuses on predictive route correction," Tyler said. The key is reframing Midwest inefficiency as a systems-level coordination issue. Maya's fingers tightened around her glass. Those were her points. Weather delays, driver penalties, warehouse bottlenecks, feedback loops from people actually touching the work. Grant nodded. Interesting. Where did that insight come from? Maya stepped closer before she could lose her nerve. Part of it came from warehouse patterns, she said. When route schedules ignore local conditions, the delay gets pushed down to drivers and dock teams. I saw that happen a lot when I worked. Tyler smiled and cut in smoothly. Maya has a very field-level perspective, he said. It's useful color. I shaped it into the operational framework. A few people chuckled politely, not loudly. That would have been easier to fight. This was softer, cleaner, the kind of insult that wore a tie. Claire heard it. Maya saw that she heard it. But Claire only lifted her glass and said, Tyler has done an excellent job translating raw observations into leadership language. Raw observations. Again, Maya felt heat rise in her face. She wanted to answer. She wanted to say that leadership language meant nothing if it erased the people who understood the problem. Instead, she swallowed it. At the far side of the room, Evan stood in his gray facilities uniform, collecting empty plates from a side table. He had seen the exchange. He had also seen Claire's choice not to stop it. Then a wine glass slipped from Brandon's hand and shattered near the cocktail tables. Red wine spread across the pale floor. Everyone stepped back. Tyler glanced toward Evan. Ed, he called, loud enough for this small circle to hear. You might want to get that before someone important ruins their shoes. A few trainees laughed. Evan set down the plates and reached for his cart. Tyler added, Careful though, that floor probably costs more than your monthly paycheck. The room went still for half a second. Then someone gave an uncomfortable laugh, and the moment tried to disappear. Maya did not let it. She crossed the floor, crouched down, and started picking up the larger pieces of glass with a napkin. Maya, Evan said quietly, moving toward her. Don't. But she had already reached for a shard near the table leg. It sliced across her palm. She inhaled sharply. A line of blood appeared bright against her skin. For the first time all evening, Tyler's smile faltered. Evan was beside her instantly, not like a janitor answering an order, like a man who had forgotten what role he was supposed to be playing. He knelt, took a clean cloth from his cart, and pressed it gently against her hand. Hold this, he said, his voice low. Maya looked at him. There was something in his face she could not name. Anger, yes, but not at her. Concern controlled so tightly it almost looked like pain. I'm okay, she whispered. No, he said, you're bleeding. For a moment the noise of the party faded. Maya saw only the man kneeling in front of her, steadying her hand as if her small wound mattered more than the executives watching them. Then Tyler cleared his throat. Okay, this is getting dramatic. Maya stood slowly, still holding the cloth to her palm. She looked at Tyler, then at the others who had laughed because it was easier than objecting. You can be smart, she said, her voice shaking but clear. You can be impressive. You can know exactly what to say in rooms like this. Tyler's jaw tightened. But none of that gives you the right to make other people smaller. The room went silent. Claire stepped forward at once. Maya, she said softly, which somehow sounded worse than shouting. I think you should step outside and compose yourself. Maya stared at her. I'm composed. Claire's expression did not change. This is a professional environment. Emotional control matters here. There it was again, the invisible red mark. Not polished, not suitable, not leadership material. Maya looked down at the cloth in her hand. Blood had begun to seep through. Evan rose beside her, his eyes fixed on Claire. For one dangerous second he almost said her name as himself, but he stayed silent, not because Claire was right, because when he finally spoke, he wanted the whole company to hear him. Maya walked out of the party alone. Behind her the jazz started again, softer than before. And Evan Cole, still dressed as Ed Miller, looked around the room at the polished faces of his future leaders and understood something with a cold, sick certainty. Walt had not exaggerated. He had understated it. The next morning, Maya received the meeting request at 8:12. Claire Donovan, HR review, 8:30 a.m. No explanation, no greeting, just a calendar block that appeared on her screen like a verdict. She knew before she entered Claire's office. The room was too clean, too bright, too carefully arranged. Claire sat behind a glass desk with Maya's trainee file open in front of her. A red digital note glowed beside Maya's name. Claire smiled as if this were a kindness. Maya, I want to begin by saying you have potential. Maya sat very still. But potential has to be paired with adaptability, Claire continued. Last night raised concerns about your emotional control in a leadership environment. My hand was bleeding, Maya said. And I'm sorry that happened, but the issue is not the injury. It's how you handled the moment afterward. Maya looked at the file. Claire did not try to hide it. Not leadership material. The words seemed small on the screen. Smaller than they felt. Claire folded her hands. This program is competitive. I don't want one uncomfortable evening to define your professional reputation. If you chose to withdraw voluntarily, we could frame it as a timing issue. You could reapply in 6 months. Maya understood then. Claire was not offering mercy. She was offering disappearance. What about Tyler? Maya asked quietly. What he said to Ed, what he did with the project. Claire's expression cooled by 1 degree. Tyler demonstrates executive maturity. You may disagree with his style, but leadership often requires confidence. Taking credit for someone else's work is confidence. Claire leaned back. Be careful, Maya. Accusations require evidence. There was nothing more to say. Maya left the office with her folder pressed against her chest, though she could not remember picking it up. She walked past the elevators, past the training room, past the coffee station where someone had already spilled sugar and left it there. At the stairwell door, she finally stopped. The concrete steps were empty and cold. Maya sat down halfway between floors and covered her mouth with one hand, not because she was crying loudly, but because she was afraid she might. The door opened a few minutes later. Ed Miller stepped inside carrying a small first aid packet and a bottle of water. Maya laughed once bitterly. Do you just appear whenever someone's having the worst day of their life? Evan looked at her bandaged palm. Only on weekdays. Despite herself, she almost smiled. Then it broke. I thought if I worked hard enough it would be enough, she said. If I stayed decent, if I didn't play games. But maybe in places like this, being decent just makes it easier for people to step on you. Evan sat 1 step below her, leaving space between them. No, he said. That's what places like this want you to believe. Maya looked at him. The problem isn't that you're kind, he continued. The problem is a system that has learned to punish people who refuse to perform. She studied his face, the calm voice, the careful words, the way he sounded less like a janitor comforting a trainee and more like a man confessing to something he had helped build. Ed, she asked softly, were you ever a manager? Evan's eyes moved to the narrow stairwell window. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he answered, I was responsible for a lot of people, and I didn't see them soon enough. Maya waited, but he gave her no more. By noon Evan was no longer only observing. In a locked security office, he reviewed hallway footage from the networking event. Tyler laughing, the broken glass, Maya bending first, Claire watching and choosing silence. By 2 p.m. he had access to the project document history. Maya's name had been removed from the core analysis. Tyler's had replaced it. By 4:15 Evan was reading internal messages between Claire and two senior managers. Phrases stood out with quiet cruelty. Tyler photographs well for the program. Maya may be too emotionally reactive. Walt's complaint should remain contained unless it resurfaces. Evan stared at that last line for a long time. Contained. That was what they called people when they became inconvenient. Walt had been contained. Maya was being contained. Maybe dozens of others had been, too. Evan closed the laptop and looked through the narrow office window at the trainee floor. For years he had believed silence made him objective. Now he saw what it had really done. It had given people like Claire enough room to build a company where truth only mattered when it was easy to manage. And tomorrow morning in front of the board, Evan intended to make the truth impossible to contain. Friday morning arrived with polished floors, fresh coffee, and a conference room full of people who still believed the week had gone exactly as planned. The board sat along one side of the long table. Senior executives filled the other. Claire stood near the screen, calm and elegant, with Tyler Reed waiting beside her in a navy suit. Maya sat in the second row with her bandaged hand folded in her lap. She could have stayed home. After the red note in her file, no one would have been surprised. But leaving quietly felt too much like agreeing with them. Tyler began his presentation with confidence. Our proposal addresses Midwest delivery and efficiency through predictive route correction and cross-department synchronization. His slides were beautiful. So beautiful they almost hid the theft. Maya listened as he explained weather delays, driver penalties, warehouse bottlenecks, and feedback loops from field workers. Her words came back to her dressed in sharper fonts and cleaner language. Claire smiled proudly. Then a board member leaned forward. Mr. Reed, what practical experience supports this recommendation? Have you worked directly with drivers or warehouse teams? Tyler paused for less than a second. We consulted internal performance data, he said, and we considered field realities from a strategic perspective. It sounded good. It meant almost nothing. Maya felt her heart beating in her throat. She thought of the drivers blamed for impossible routes, the warehouse workers blamed for schedules they never made. Walt, whose complaint had been buried, Ed kneeling on the floor with a cloth pressed against her bleeding palm. If she stayed silent now, she would not only lose her own name, she would help them erase everyone else's. Maya stood. Claire turned sharply. Maya, questions will be taken after. With respect, Maya said, her voice trembling but clear, the field realities Tyler mentioned weren't abstract. They came from patterns I saw working warehouse shifts in Ohio and from the route data we reviewed this week. Tyler's smile tightened. Maya contributed some observations. No, Maya said, I built the core analysis. The room shifted. Maya continued before fear could stop her. The problem isn't just delayed trucks. It's that the system protects itself by blaming the people with the least authority. Drivers get penalized for routes no person could complete in bad weather. Warehouse teams get called inefficient after schedules collapse upstream. And no one asks custodial or frontline staff what they see because we've trained ourselves not to see them. Tyler let out a small laugh. This is emotional. Claire stepped forward. I agree. This is not the appropriate. A quiet voice came from the back of the room. Let her finish. Everyone turned. Ed Miller stood near the wall in his gray facilities uniform. One senior manager frowned. Ed, you need to leave. Evan walked to the front slowly. He removed the fake name badge from his shirt and placed it on the conference table. My name is not Ed Miller, he said. The room went still. He looked at Claire, then Tyler, then the board. My name is Evan Cole. For a moment no one moved. Claire's face drained of color. Tyler stared as if the floor had opened beneath him. Evan picked up the remote and changed the screen. The first image showed the document history. Maya's analysis moved, renamed, and reassigned under Tyler's name. The second showed internal messages praising Tyler as the right fit for the program while calling Maya reactive. The third was security footage from the networking event. Tyler's insult, the broken glass, Maya bending first, Claire watching in silence. The final slide was Walt Simmons' complaint, buried, contained, ignored, faced the room. I spent this week as a janitor because I stopped trusting reports that made us look better than we are. What I found was not one bad trainee or one bad manager. I found a culture I allowed to decay because I was absent from the places where people were easiest to ignore. No one spoke. He turned to Tyler. Ambition is not a flaw, but using other people as steps is not leadership. Then to Claire, effective immediately, you are suspended pending an independent investigation. Claire opened her mouth, then closed it. Evan looked back at Maya. Miss Bennett, would you present your analysis? Maya stood frozen for one breath, then she walked to the front. Her voice was not perfect. Her hand shook once as she changed slides, but she explained the data clearly. Routes, storms, driver feedback, warehouse timing, and the cost of ignoring people closest to the work. This time no one interrupted. This time the room listened. After the truth came out, Cole and Hartwell did not change overnight. Evan made sure no one pretended it had. The trainee program was rebuilt from the ground up. Anonymous complaints no longer disappeared into quiet HR folders. Drivers, warehouse workers, security guards, and custodial staff were invited into meetings where decisions had once been made without them. And when Walt Simmons returned after knee surgery, Evan offered him a part-time role as an operational culture advisor. Walt laughed at the title.